Hey there, welcome to another Ask Alyssa Anything session where I'm responding to questions you've left in the comments about the publishing industry and how to write a better book. These sessions are a fun way for me to interact directly with you. I know I can't get back to all of the comments, so I hope that these sessions are proving interesting and that they are giving you some more insight outside of my regularly scheduled programming. Whether you're new here or you've been watching for a while but haven't subscribed, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button to join this amazing, growing community of writers. And while you're at it, just hit that thumbs up button for the YouTube algorithm. And pop down into the description before you forget to grab my free story self-assessment worksheet. If you have a current work in progress, it is a fun, easy quiz designed to help you look at your story from a new perspective and see what you are doing really well and what you could improve on the next draft. It's a good tool if you are really in the weeds and you're having trouble sorting out what to do next with your story. Downloading that is going to sign you up for my newsletter where I publish exclusive interviews with publishing industry professionals and published authors, so you don't want to miss out on the amazing tips they are sharing. If you want to go straight to the newsletter, the link is also in the description as well. We have some great questions on deck today, so let's dive in. Is it possible to not show important scenes at all because they are very violent? Like, those scenes have a major impact on the plot and characters, but I don't want to show them on the page because I don't want to trigger the readers. Is it okay if I just show what happens before and after those scenes? I still want to show the emotional impact of these scenes, but I don't want it to be harmful. First, I really appreciate that you are being so sensitive and so cognizant of how readers might experience those violent scenes. That shows that you are an empathetic writer and you are really putting the reader's experience first, which is very important. I'm not going to give a black or white answer for this question because there isn't a right or wrong way to approach it. It all depends on your story. So I'll give you some framework for ways to think about violence in your story. First is the genre. Is this a genre in which readers accept or maybe even expect a certain amount of violence? That would be thriller and horror, for example. In those genres, it is not going to necessarily be overly jarring to the reader to encounter violence because that is a mainstay of the genre and an element that most stories in the genre have. If you are writing outside of those genres, then it might be a better idea to either pare back the violence or, as you say, not show it on the page. Remember though that the reader's experience of a violent scene all comes down to how you write it. If you write it in extremely gory detail that makes the reader cringe, that's one thing, but you can also write a violent scene that conveys the raw emotion and the effect of the events without actually making the reader uncomfortable or more uncomfortable than they need to be. If you're going between not knowing whether to include the violent scene or not, I would ask yourself if it is essential for the reader to experience that scene alongside the characters for us to register the ramifications of it. If we really do need to see how this protagonist endures this violence, then it might be worth trying to write it. For instance, if they blacked out during the violence and don't have any recollection of what actually happened, then it's likely that you could go on without including the actual scene itself. I know that I didn't give you a black or white yes or no answer to that, but I hope that helps you think through how you ultimately decide to approach the violent scene. Here's the next question. Is it worth trying to query a short story collection as a debut author? Pros and cons of doing so. I believe I've answered this question about short stories before in another Q&A, but I want to answer it again because my answer has somewhat changed in 2023 specifically. So I actually included short story collections as one of the worst genres for traditional publishing when I did that video a while back, because historically it has been extremely hard to get a book deal for a story collection, particularly if you are a debut author or you don't have specific publishing credentials. That said though, at the beginning of this year, I did a dive into what agents were looking for, and I looked through the Publishers Marketplace debut fiction deals, and I saw a couple of story collections, which I was quite surprised by. Now, granted, I don't have all the information about those deals. I'm not sure if those writers had a very established presence already and had won awards, for example, for their short stories, or if they are truly just a complete debut and they have no prior publishing credentials. but I was surprised to see story collections on the list at all. So here's what I'll say. It might be tough and you might not end up getting a literary agent, but a literary agent might take a chance on you in the best case scenario, or a literary agent might say, hey, I love your writing, but I don't do story collections, send me a novel if you ever write one. That will still get you a connection and an in with an agent if you do ultimately decide to work on another manuscript that might be a better fit for the publishing marketplace or for that agent. So there's no downside to querying your story collection except your time and energy and the decision of whether you want to embark on the tumultuous querying process. But if you feel compelled to, then I would say do it. We have time for one more question today. I have a question about third-person close POV with alternating character perspectives. I know the characters' voices should sound different, but I'm finding that my narrator's voice also sounds different. Should the narrator's voice stay consistent between perspectives? So in certain styles of very close third-person narration, the narration can actually start to adopt the character's own voice. And we see this especially if an author chooses to convey the POV character's thoughts in the narration itself, meaning you're not marking with italics that it's their internal thought, but we're just experiencing their thoughts in the narrative itself. So for instance, that could sound something like, Kara was worried that this day was going to be the worst she's ever had in her entire life. We are registering Kara's thought, right, about her fear that this is going to be the worst day of her entire life, but it is being conveyed in the narration such that the narrative itself adopts her own voice, right? So if you are writing in that style, then I think it is completely fine for the narration to change styles according to the POV character. I would just say that you want it to stay consistent to each POV character, meaning Jack's narration and voice sounds like Jack, and then Jill's narration and voice sounds like Jill, and not mingling them so that the reader always knows whose POV we are in and whose voice we are hearing. That's all we had time for today. Thank you so much to everyone who submitted a question, and if you have something you'd like to ask, please drop it in the comments here and it will be added to my queue. Don't forget to hit that like button if you are enjoying these sessions, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and grab your free story self-assessment worksheet in the description below, and check out the link to my newsletter. Thanks so much for watching and happy writing.